All right. Mic check real quick. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Might need to get a little closer. Mic check 1 2 1 2. I think that's better. Um, hmm. Let me check the audio settings just to make sure. Audio check 1 2 1 2. All right, that looks good. Cool. We're gonna move on. Audio cancellation, audio output, microphone. All right, everything's good. Let's carry on. So today we will be continuing our read-along. Uh, if you need a description, check the description box. This is a nonprofit, just read along. No use, as well as anybody else that wants to read along. Doesn't have the time to read, so they can listen to this audio if they like. I'm not the best reader, but nevertheless, I'm doing this for my own personal gain, so that I can keep on these articles for the year. And today we will be starting with this read along. The articles are, the link is in the description box. Generally, the articles are from liberationnews.org. Feel free to support them or use the link. The articles are free to read. PG&E's skyrocket electricity rates enrich investors at our expense by Gregory Stevens. Article was written on August 26, 2024, or published on that date. The photo is a rally in front of the California Public Utilities Commission against PG&E rate hikes. Photo by Liberation Photo. The picture shows a few activists with rate picketing signs. One of the signs says "End Capitalism Before Us, Vote Socialist, Claudia and Karina 2024. The other one says PG&E rate hikes. The big banner says Golden State Energy now. All right, and the article as follows. As our campaign to abolish the nation's largest and deadliest utility monopoly continues, there is a consistent theme among those we talk to, a visceral hatred of Pacific Gas and Electric. In San Francisco, when talking to people in my own neighborhood, the Mission District, we often hear from single mothers, college students, long-term residents, and families of all kinds that their PG&E utility rates have skyrocketed while their paychecks have remained stagnant. The horror stories we've heard from the residents of Santa Rosa and Lake are even worse. Wildfires caused by PG&E equipment force families to evacuate their homes, and when the smoke clears, many of them have nothing to return to. The utility, which caused the fires by neglecting to inspect and maintain century-old power lines, provides zero support to the people who have been displaced or even rendered homeless. Instead, PG&E rapidly increases electricity rates, putting people in an even more precarious situation. Recently, it's been reported that PG&E is charging some people almost $1,000 a month for electricity in Central Valley, a predominantly working-class part of the state. Triple-digit temperatures this summer have created an essential need for power. Despite uncomfortable and unsafe temperatures, residents often try to save money by foregoing their air conditioning. Bills. Once a family falls behind on their bills, PG&E will shut off their power entirely and hardships increase. Food spoils, medical devices can't function, phones can't be charged, water can't be heated. In 2023, PG&E shut power off over 166,000 families who couldn't keep up with their outrageous prices. 17% of these shutoffs were still shut off 3 months later. while working people agonize over which necessities they'll be able to afford and which they'll have to cut each month. PG&E investors and executives rake in the cash. CEO Patricia Pope took $17 million in the 2023 fiscal year, over 60 times the wage of the average PG&E worker. In the same year, $1.8 billion in profits went straight into the pockets of the shareholders as dividends. As they forced families to go months without power, they float around the world on mega yachts. And there's a graph here, PG&E electricity rates from 2008 to 2024. The source is pge.com, and the rate graph shows from the date of January 1st to 2008, the rate per kilowatt hour was about maybe close to about 17 cents. Currently in January 1st of 2024, per kilowatt hour of usage had peaked at 45 cents, a little over 45 cents, and has now fallen a little closer to like 41 or 42 cents. So from 40 to about 15, from 45 to 15, that's about a triple hike in rates from, say, 2008 to 2024. Has anybody's wages tripled in rates? I think not. Okay, we'll continue with the article here. Why do our rates continue skyrocketing while service and safety aren't improving? There's the corporate spin, and then there's reality. PG&E says they have to fund the Community Wildfire Safety Program, a program that was developed after the catastrophic 2017 North Bay fires and 2018 Camp Fire, which alone killed over 80 people, destroyed over 18,000 structures, and hundreds of thousands of acres were burned. Our campaign demands that PG&E should right its wrongs when it comes to wildfire migration, but reducing wildfire risks stemming from its energy infrastructure should not happen on the backs of poor and working Californians who are struggling to keep the lights on. So then, why are working class ratepayers having to bear this financial burden instead of Geisha Williams, President and CEO of PG&E from 2017 to 2019? Or David Gabbard, Senior Director of Transmission Asset Management, who both ran PG&E's century-old equipment into the ground to save costs and rake in higher profits for investors. People died because of these profit-oriented decisions, and we had to pay for it all. As of March 31st, just 3 months into the year, PG&E reported $5 billion in profits. They have a track record of not investing in upgrades to the electrical grid or putting power lines underground, two things that would drastically reduce the risk of sparking more devastating wildfires. It's no wonder utility debt for California customers is nearly $3 billion and continues to rise. There is an inherent contradiction within the capitalist system where private companies control our basic necessities, forcing us to pay ever higher prices for clean water, clean air, electricity, housing, education, and more, all to enrich the small few of the ruling class. It's an old system we live under. It's an odd system we live under, that all our basic necessities are commodified, and if we don't have money, we cannot survive. Under the inhumane system of capitalism, PG&E has monopoly control on your ability to power your lights, turn on your oven, or use your water heater, and they have full control on how much they profit off of your simply trying to meet your basic needs. It is their job to make a profit. It is not their job to worry about safety. This is exactly why we need non-profit utilities, because they would not be driven by the need to make a profit, but would be driven by public service. From a capitalist perspective, profit is the only way to survive, let alone thrive, in the competitive market, and therefore profit is the bottom line. It is all that matters. Instead of reinvesting the billions of dollars that companies like PG&E have made off of our energy usage into upgrading the grid and undergrounding power lines, they have lined the pockets of their investors. The $5 billion in profits already made by PG&E in the first 3 months of 2024 could have been spent on upgrading infrastructure, mitigating fire risk, and boosting climate resilience across Northern California. Instead, our rates have gone up by 13%, around $35 every month, as PG&E seeks higher profits by pushing the community wildfire safety program costs onto ratepayers, blaming upgrades to the system as the cause of Blaming upgrades to the system as the cause for rising rates is absurd, while raking in billions of dollars in profits and using all of it to enrich hedge fund investors. It is clear that PG&E will never be accountable to the people of the California Public Utilities Commission, a public accountability arm of the state that has completely lost its fundamental purpose by becoming bedmates with PG&E. Only when PG&E is turned over to the people to be democratically owned and managed will we have a utility that is accountable to the ratepayers and governing bodies. We will also have a utility that is not run to make profits, but is run to provide the energy needs of California residents. Enter Golden State Energy. In 2020, California Governor Gavin Newsom passed SB 350, a law that targets corporate negligence by allowing the state government to convert PG&E into a nonprofit if it fails to provide safe and reliable power to consumers. Quote, no more business as usual for PG&E, end quote, said Newsom, adding that the bill's passage marked a, quote, critical step in the transformation of PG&E into a utility that is accountable to those it serves, the people of California, end quote. Currently, PG&E is only held accountable to shareholders, a majority owned by a small group of finance banks, Vanguard, Fidelity, BlackRock, JP Morgan, and Capital. Quote, there's no motivation to maximize returns and extra value for public-owned utilities from the community because all of the board's activities are for the benefit of the people in OPPD territories, end quote. Eric Williams, board member of Omaha Public Power District Board, OPPD, told Energy News last year. Golden State Energy would also be based on public benefit, avoiding the profit model by investors, any profits made back into the system itself. Having a public utility like Golden State Energy would be similar to how energy is provided in a socialist society. Under a socialist economy, energy democracy would become a reality as energy access would be a human right. Democratically controlled and operated energy systems would power all of our communities. Every household and business would have access to safe and reliable energy, and public safety and environmental protections would be centered rather than corporate greed and investor dividends. This socialist future is not only necessary, especially as a climate change intensifies and the capitalist solutions fail, but it is also possible. Under capitalism, there is little incentive for corporations like PG&E to invest in public health and well-being, like clean energy development, because it would mean lower dividends for shareholders. That's also why, instead of using the wealth they have already collected from ratepayers, they are raising rates and pushing these costs onto all of us. Within the profit-driven capitalist system, the essential problem of an IOU utility like PG&E are impossible to fix, as they will always be driven distinguish how capitalism has overstayed its welcome and distinguish how it is not beneficial to the people. I personally think it never has, compared to socialist programs, which pool the resources for the benefit of everybody, right? People like to think, or, well, the Marxist idea is that, not idea, but dialectical materialism thought and theory is that when capitalism fully uh, is utilized and maximized to the point where it's no longer needed, that the people will rise and push for socialism, right? And from socialism eventually will come communism, which is a full democracy without actual leaders or lords or dictators or presidents, which centralize the power in the hand of a few. Unfortunately, this is not a passive process where we can just wait for capitalism to cave in on itself, because capitalism, the market, has a way to reinvent itself to make itself look like it's the only option. This is why we read, this is why we study, this is why we keep informed, and this is why we become mobilized activists to keep pushing the agenda of the socialist, of the communist, of the Marxist, of the Leninist, of egalitarians, and of human rights. Because if we stand by quietly, we are being complicit, and nothing's going to move forward. Um, so it's important to highlight PG&E as the part of capitalism that never really made sense, and shouldn't be lifted up as free market capitalism works, because obviously it doesn't. It works for a handful of investors that likely don't even live in California, have nothing to do with California, don't even care if California burns down. All they care about is their investments. And this is why we say that capitalism rewards the most ghoulish and the greediest people. Uh, a utility should be socialized for the common good. You cut costs on it. You create better programs that make it more efficient, not only in cost, but energy efficient. Um, and these are just things that aren't being done in California. They are, like the article states, they are just creating profits to pocket the money themselves, pay themselves big bonuses, big yearly incomes, big salaries for creating investments, quote unquote investment profits for their investors, for their shareholders, right? For their stock market portfolios. Um, so in general, the article is spot on. We need to highlight issues like this so that people in California and people around the United States understand that this is not a sustainable system. This is a system that just leads back to imperialism, leads back to feudal lords, leads back to the Gilded Age, where the people aren't uh, direct slaves, but by proxy are enslaved by the system because they have to work multiple jobs just to make ends meet, just so that other people can profit and go ride around multiple yachts, right? Um, so, in conclusion, yeah, capitalism sucks, doesn't work. We as humanity need to advance and do better. As a Stoic practicer, someone that practices Stoicism, that supports egalitarianism, studies like Buddhism too, um, we have to look at this as a way of being virtuous or doing good for the sake of doing good. And the best way to do more good is to be informed, to have a holistic view in the world so that we can continue doing good, so that we can see what the issues really are, so that when people try to divide us and pull the wool over our eyes, we can say, no, that doesn't make sense. That's not logical. That doesn't support the studies. Uh, and we can fight back. Cool. So great article. Going to move on. Uh, not too many to read today, but that one was there. PG&E. There's about three more. There might be four more. I don't know. The economy, the election, Democrats, Republicans deliver for workers. Okay. NTSB report of East Palestine. Uh-huh. Okay. Let's see here. Next article. Give me a sip of water. Oh, this is just a common practice for me to check wrong. All right. Next article titled NTSB Report on East Palestine, Ohio Rail Derailment Shows the Need for Public Ownership of Railroads. This is an article by Adam Barrington, organizer with Railroad Workers United, August 26, 2024. And the picture is, I believe, a meeting of the Railroad Workers United. But let's read the article and see what it's about. Article reads as so. On February 3rd, 2023, a Norfolk Southern train derailed in East Palestine, Ohio, exposing residents to severe hazardous material which continue to impact their health to this day. In June, the National Transportation Safety Board disclosed the findings of its investigation on the derailment, which determined that the cause of the derailment was a defective wheel bearing. However, this technical issue does not tell the whole story, the story of an industry which exemplifies capitalism's wanton destruction of human life in the pursuit of profit. According to the NTSB, Norfolk Southern Railway and its contractors failed, quote, to communicate relevant expertise and dissenting opinions to the incident commander, end quote, following the derailment. The NTSB also found that Norfolk Southern's insistence, quote, that the tank cars were at risk of catastrophic failure from a polymerization reaction, end quote, was inaccurate. This, quote, created unwarranted urgency and led to the unnecessary decision to vent and burn 5 derailed vinyl chloride monomer tank cars to prevent a polymerization-induced tank car capture, end quote. In other words, the mild-sized plume of toxic gas, the image which plastered every major media outlet, was avoidable. The fact that the breached rail cars were .111s, a model of tank car that is being phased out of use for transporting flammable liquids, also contributed to the severity of the disaster. The .111 tank crashworthiness and propensity to release its cargo in a derailment, end quote. In the case of East Palestine, flammable and combustible liquids were released after 3 tank cars were mechanically breached. When the liquids ignited, the fire spread and exposed other tank cars to heat. This led to the irresponsible decision to conduct a vent and burn of 5 tank cars carrying vinyl chloride. The result was a towering mushroom cloud that loomed over East Palestine and the surrounding area. In addition, Norfolk Southern's delay in transmitting the train consist information to emergency responders contributed to the exposure of responders and the public to post-derailment hazard, which continue to seriously impact the people of East Palestine to this day. Irresponsible business practices. The Norfolk Southern, for Norfolk Southern, for excuse me, irresponsible business practices. For Norfolk Southern, this type of irresponsible behavior is part of the course. In 2002, the NTSB concluded its investigation of a derailment in Farragut, Tennessee, by noting that the lack of company procedures regarding reporting and handling of problems involving main tracks switches was a major factor in the accident. Following a 2005 train crash in Greenville, South Carolina, which caused the deaths of 9 people by chlorine exposure, federal prosecutors sued Norfolk Southern over the accident's environmental impact. After diesel fuel and more than 10 pounds of chlorine ran into Horse Creeks in Grantville, Norfolk Southern failed to notify the Federal National Response Center in a timely manner, violated the Clean Water Act, and additionally violated the federal Superfund law. State investigators found chemical burned vegetation as well as 1,800 yards of contaminated creek following the wreck, and at least 1,000 fish died from the chemical spill. In October 2022, a Norfolk Southern train derailed on a bridge in Sandusky, Ohio, blocking an Amtrak line, with debris and tank cars falling onto the street below. While irresponsible business practices are to be expected from a company with a track record like Norfolk Southern, the company's outright disregard for basic public safety and accountability can still leave regulators and researchers flabbergasted. According to NTSB Chair Jennifer Holmdy, Norfolk Southern interfered with the NTSB East Palestine investigation and abused its status as a party to the probe. Home Homendy called Norfolk Southern's actions, quote, unprecedented, end quote, and, quote, reprehensible, end quote. A private exchange with a senior company executive 2 weeks prior to the NTSB East Palestine board meeting ended with, according to Homendy, a threat from Norfolk Southern. Exploitive working conditions. Though Norfolk Southern has consistently engaged in egregious behavior, including allegedly threatening the chair of a government investigation agency, the company is hardly different from other Class I railroad companies. The six largest freight railroad companies in North America, especially in regard to the treatment of workers, during the 2022 battle between rail workers and the Class I companies, reports of deplorable working conditions and draconian attendance policies were widely publicized. BNSF workers, for example, had to choose between work or attending funerals for loved ones, doctor appointments, and time with their families as a result of an attendance policy that requires workers to be on call 90% of the time. Last spring, it was found that Union Pacific undermined government safety assessments on the railroads and retaliated against workers who reported railcar flaws. It took immense pressure on the Class I carriers to even grant sick leave to railroad workers. According to the U.S. Department of Transportation, only about 5% of Class I freight railroad workers had paid sick leave coverage at the end of 2022. Even so, the, quote, labor-friendly, end quote, Biden administration was quick to block a national rail strike and subsequently force a contract guaranteeing no sick days down the throat of rail workers. Though DOT reports that as of June 25th, 90% of railroad workers have paid sick leave, this paid sick leave only exists on paper. For many railroad workers, the right to paid sick leave has still not been realized. We must keep in mind that the dangerous problems with U.S. railroads are systemic. The Class I companies and their owners have shown that they are incapable of running a rail system that safely and effectively serves the need of the public. In the pursuit of short-term profit, the Class I robber barons have all but strangled the railroad industry, leaving exhausted rail workers, brutalized trackside communities, cheated small shippers, and other impacted groups in their wake. A rail system left in the hands of the Class I profiteers leaves the risk of catastrophic events for workers, trackside communities, and the greater public acceptably high. The need for public ownership. The continued environmental degradation, deteriorating working conditions, and certainly of future disasters akin to the derailment in East Palestine has spurred unions, environmental organizations, and community activists to fight back by calling for the nationalization of the rail system. Railroad Workers United, a rank and file caucus of union railroad workers from across North America, that gained wide recognition during the 2022 battle between rail unions and the Class 1 railroads is spearheading a campaign for public ownership of the railroads. The campaign has been endorsed by United Electrical Workers, the Vermont AFL-CIO, the Northern Nevada Central Labor Council, and various locals from unions including the International Longshore and Warehouse Union, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, United Steelworkers, Service Employees International Unions, and others. By linking the interest of workers, trackside communities, the environment, and the general public, RWU and its allies are taking a critical step towards expropriating capitalist profiteers of the railroad industry. With mass public support, the struggle for public ownership of the rail system will be a large step on the long path of working class revolution. Feature photo was of NTSB investigation here in East Palestine, Ohio by NTSB Gov is marked with public domain mark 1.0. Hashtag crime of capitalism, hashtag East Palestine, hashtag environment, hashtag labor. This article is very related to the same issue at PG&E in California, so there's not much more I can add to it. I said that the example is always that they cut corners and make things hazardous and unsafe for people just to make a profit. And then they pass on the hardships of repairing their damages to the people, to the state. This is corrupt crony capitalism. Um, and this is why people eventually support social programs which allow people a voice, an actual democratic voice into how these railroads are treated, into how energy is treated. That's why socialist programs are so popular. In most states, people love having their roads. If you did not have a socialist program to create your roads, then most people would have to create their own roads and they would look a wild mess and they would not be kept up. Um, of course, there's inefficiencies in road work, but these inefficiencies are created by capitalism. So there is not. It's not like there isn't the resources, like there isn't the material to create roads or the manpower to keep roads up. It's just that it's all controlled under a budget that creates profit for somebody at the expense of the rest of us, right? But generally, social programs are programs that create an infrastructure or a resource that is equally distributed to the people for their needs so that everyone can access them. Um, if you put capitalism to the equation, then it throws a monkey wrench into the equation where it makes it inefficient. That's why socialist programs are then looked at as, oh, this obviously doesn't work. Socialism doesn't work. Well, how can you work? How can it work properly if you are turning it into a capitalist venture? For example, like I was saying, roads, right? If it was fully socialized to keep up roads, then roads would just be kept up. But because the contracts from the state have to go to some kind of a capitalist road manufacturer, then the prices can be hiked, the materials can be wasted or used inefficiently. There can be delays because you have a crazy middleman trying to create profit or extract profit from the business. Um, Obviously, I can go deeper into this, but it just shows how anything capitalism is involved in, it makes an inefficiency that the people pay for, uh, just so that uh, profiteers, stockholders, investors can get fat and own mansions and yachts. This is not something to be jealous about. This is immorally, this is moral bankruptcy, and no one should be aspired to be a billionaire at the expense of other people. That's just ghoulish. That's capitalism. Okay, cool. So let's move on to the next article. Let me check my views here. Let's see here. Make sure the stream is all good. All right, stream looks good. Cool. Let's move along here. Yeah, this is a good one. The economy and the election. Democrats and Republicans can't deliver for workers. By Eugene Purrier, August 29th, 2024, 5-minute read. Photo, a worker in a food distribution warehouse. Credit, Rob Pixel Press Series. A worker in a food distribution warehouse. All right. Article reads, with convention season concluded, one thing is clear. Neither of the two capitalist parties have an answer for the cost of living crisis facing the working class. For the working class, the entire conversation around inflation, interest rates, and the economy raises crucial questions. Mainly, how can we secure an economic future where workers can thrive, not just barely survive? Both major parties are speaking to this issue, but neither is really offering notable change. While their agendas are not the same, neither speaks to the depth of the crisis facing the working class or lays out a blueprint for turning it around. The real economy. According to the US Census Bureau, 147 million people are having at least, quote, a little trouble, end quote, meeting their expenses week to week. 37.6 million are finding it, quote, very difficult, end quote, and 21.5 million when hungry at least, quote, sometimes, end quote, during the last week. There are many ways to measure employment, and according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, unemployment is truly about 16%. Newspapers are touting falling inflation. In general, the trend is downward. But what does that really mean? The cost of housing is up 5.1% from this time last year, electricity 4.9%, food at the grocery store is up 2. Pound of chicken is up 22% from July of 2020. So inflation may be, quote, cooling, end quote, but only in relation to the astronomical highs of the past couple years. Capitalist politics, no solution. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are presenting the same plan to workers, that your wages will go up and prices will go down. Trump has no real plan on inflation, and insofar as we can tell, his plan will reduce wages for tens of millions. Trump is against any form of price controls or attempts to prevent price gouging. He also is proposing massive increases in tariffs that almost certainly will increase prices of many basic goods. Even more, Trump is seeking to significantly reduce overtime pay. Trump also says he will massively cut everyone's taxes. However, the plans put together by his likely policy team would actually increase taxes for everyone making less than $182,000. Harris is talking tough on taking on big corporations. Her, quote, plan, end quote, however, does not truly address this. Harris has released almost no details on how she would keep down prices. From what we glean, her plan boils down to making it easier for the government to sue individual companies for ill-defined price gouging that may, at some point, perhaps years in the future, bring down prices at that one company. Further, the Harris-Walz campaign is touting that they would pursue many of the same policies as the Biden-Harris administration that have failed to bring down prices over the last few years. Housing is one of the biggest costs for working families and one of the biggest drivers of inflation. Harris is promising to build 3 million new homes during her presidential tenure. We need, however, 4.3 to 7.3 million new homes to truly address the affordable housing crisis. Harris has promised to increase the federal minimum wage, but not specified how much. There is no scenario in which Congress would pass a $15 minimum wage currently, and, quote, any wage rate below $15 an hour is insufficient, end quote, for workers to meet the basic cost of goods and services, according to the Economic Policy Institute. So even if she comes through, the federal minimum wage will still be a poverty wage under President Harris. Challenging power. Neither party can provide solutions that meet the scale of our problems because they are first and foremost concerned with protecting capitalist power. Trump's unfettered capitalism is clear enough, reveling in how great a union buster Elon Musk is and promoting a tax cut that will give hundreds of billions of dollars to corporations and the super wealthy. Harris has promised the crypto industry that she will be, quote, pro-business, end quote, cozied up to some of the biggest monopoly corporations on the planet, and reassured the oil lobby there will be no ban on fracking. One of her top advisors, Tony West, has been Uber's top lawyer in efforts to keep drivers' wages and benefits down, something her vice presidential nominee, Tim Walz, has also worked with Uber on. In fact, one of her first tasks once she became the nominee was the, quote, work to build bridges to the business world, end quote. The quote, business world, end quote, is exactly who is to blame for inflation. This is also the business world that has waged a war on any increased spending for programs that help the working class and fought hard to make sure the 1% doesn't pay a dime for more in taxes. Quote, business world, end quote, lobbying is why the United States is still 23 to 37% short of meeting the required 2030 emissions reductions and why the target touted by Biden and Harris is well below what is needed to save the planet. The lobbyists who serve the, quote, business world, end quote, are the reason why the U.S. is set to spend $1.7 trillion on the development of one plane, the F-35, that, quote, doesn't work the way it's supposed to, end quote, or a $2 trillion multi-year plan to build a new generation of nuclear weapons, despite 61% of people supporting the phasing out of many such systems. The interests of workers are directly opposed to the interest of capitalists. Capitalists only get richer if workers get poorer. Capitalists get richer if they pay lower taxes and the government does less to support working families and regulate harmful practices. If you feel that everyone deserves a roof over their head, enough food to eat, access to a good education, and a good job that doesn't leave you in poverty at the end of your shift, your values clash with the values of the 1% who run this country. Socialism is the answer. The capitalist economy does not work for workers. Only massive changes in the economy, which 69% of Americans want, that challenge the idea that corporate profits should trump all other considerations can help reverse course and build an economy that works for workers. The good news is society is already partially structured for socialist transformation. Currently, the top 1% of companies by sales account for 80% of revenues. If workers control just the 100 largest corporations, 0.00% of all businesses, they would control the key levers of investment, production, and distribution. Practically, the biggest obstacle then to a socialist transformation is a relatively small group of capitalists who control the economy. The only candidate in the current election with this sort of program is Claudia de la Cruz and her running mate, Karina Garcia. If we want a world where workers live and thrive with dignity, the evidence is clear enough on who we should support in the 2024 election. Hashtag US working class. Yeah, man. Um, so I need to reread these last three paragraphs because this is key, right? I don't really need to analyze this article um, because it's stating what the problem and the answer clearly is. But there's a fact here that is very important. So I'm just going to reread these last three sections. Uh, Socialism is the answer. The capitalist economy does not work for workers. Only massive changes in the economy, which 69% of Americans want, that challenge the idea that corporate profits should trump all other considerations, can help reverse course and build an economy that works for workers. Uh, the good news is society is already partially structured for socialist transformation. Currently, the top 1% of companies by sales accounts for 80% of revenues. If workers control just the 100 largest corporations, 0.00% of all businesses, they would control the key levers of investment, production, and distribution. Practically, the biggest obstacle then to a socialist transformation is the relatively small groups of capitalists who control the economy. The only candidates in the current election with this sort of program is Claudia de la Cruz and her running mate, Karina Garcia. If we want a world where workers live and thrive with dignity, the evidence is clear enough on who we should support in the 2024 election. So touching base on the top 1% of the company's scale by sales account for 80% of revenues, we should remember that 1% of the 1% really are billionaires that run the world. This is about 3,000 billionaires, maybe a few more. I think this year it rose up to 4,000 billionaires. The answer to me is really to dissolve all these billionaires under companies and socialize them, because these are the top people that are actually controlling, moving the strings, uh, puppeteering the governments. These are the people that have way too much power and are just legacy ghouls that are pretty much just poisoning our planet for their personal gain to maintain their supreme power as imperialists. Um, it's only about 3 to 4,000 people. I mean, like, there's 8 billion people in the world. If we were all uh, properly informed, socially based, or Marxist based, uh, yeah, this could change overnight. We just need to get the word out there. We really, I can't emphasize how important it is to educate people, uh, to organize and mobilize people. The same with Karina, right? Claudia and Karina. We shouldn't just vote for them because we think they can win. We should vote for them because it's morally correct. It is the morally correct thing to do, and because it empowers them more, even if they can't win because the system is rigged. Uh, Showing your support for them shows that more people are catching on to the system. And not only that, but it creates a bigger base for people like Claudia and Karina to not just be politicians, but to be uh, activists, educators, uh, organizers, and mobilizers, which is extremely important, because in reality, the transformation won't happen in the White House. It won't happen in the government. It will happen in the streets. And whether it becomes a violent or nonviolent transformation will be up to the 1%. And we know how that usually goes. They always choose violence to oppress the people. But that's why we have to be educated and organized and well mobilized and prepared. All right, let's move along. Mm, Audio check 1 2 1 2. All good. Right. Um, I believe this is the last article for today. Let me see. Let me see if I can just squeeze another article here somewhere. Nope. Looks like that's all of it. And I believe this is a short one, um, but an important one nonetheless. So this is a video of Harris and the Democrats have no solutions for Black America. It's a PSL roundtable. Uh, article by the Liberation staff on August 29th, 2024. It's a light 1-minute read, and I'll read it for you here. All across the country, young people are increasingly dissatisfied with not only the two-party electoral system and the limited options it provides us, but the entire capitalist system that is running but the entire capitalist system that is running humanity and the planet into the ground. The Democrats believe that Kamala Harris's candidacy as a black woman will distract from the reality of the role that both she and Joe Biden played over not just the last 10 months of genocide in Gaza, but the entire 4 years of their administration's loyalty to Wall Street and the war machine. Her program, she isn't Donald Trump. But what are young people, and in particularly young black people, really looking for? Not another, quote, progressive, end quote, phase that once again will let down working class people everywhere. PSL members and volunteers of the Vote Socialist 2024 campaign, Jalen, Rachel, and Sean, discuss the Harris-Walz campaign, what it means for young black people, and why we need an alternative that will carry on the fight beyond the ballot box. And here they provide a YouTube video link of the video. Let me click on it to just give a quick description of what's in store here. All right, so it is a 1-hour video. The description is the same. But yeah, click on the link, get informed, listen to it while you cook breakfast or drive to work or any downtime like that. Uh, definitely support Liberation News. Definitely support Claudia and send funds if possible. Um, or to, I mean, ultimately, even to any leftist organization that is not the major duopoly, the major two parties that are constantly lying to you and using a ratchet effect to to make you vote for one because it's less worse than the other, so they say. But both parties are equally bad because both parties support the capitalist agenda to create profits on the backs of hard workers for the elite, for the 1%. And both parties fully fund wars that are explicitly involved in war crimes. Both parties are going to fund Israel. Both parties are going to fund the IDF. Uh, and uh, the war crimes in Palestine and Gaza will continue. Um, so we must reject them. We must reject them and show it that is an unpopular agenda, just like MLK showed that oppressing black people from voting was an unpopular agenda. And we must hit the streets and continue to show that it's unpopular and that it's going to cost them in the ballot boxes and economically if they continue to support such horrible war crimes. All right, that is it for today. As I said, there are no more articles. I look forward to reading more articles till the end of the year and then move on from there to perhaps different articles or just continue reading these, but maybe not as frequent. Uh, let's see. But yeah, feel free to check out the description box and support Liberation News or look into what PSL is about. Everybody have a great day. Have a great work week. Have a great long Labor Day weekend. And try to rest up. Try not to let this drive you crazy. Uh, Me personally, I use a lot of philosophy such as Stoicism, Taoism, or Buddhism to focus on inner peace and traveling this landscape uh, with a serene or peaceful mind to be a more productive person for